But how do you then keep people from being, slandered, as was the case in the editorial page?
I wouldn't call it, first of all, there's a difference between slander and libel and all those words that people use. Slander is verbal.
Right.
So we don't slander. And we also don't libel people. Editorial pages are very different from the rest of the paper, which is what I think a lot of people don't seem to understand. The columnist can publish their opinion, whether or not he based it on information that other people think is sound, solid information. That's their opinion, and they can write to us and tell us about it. I can't tell a columnist that his basis for opinions is I can't evaluate that for him necessarily, unless it's factually wrong, and he based things on quotes, and whether or not it was sound according to other people, that's their opinion. Okay. That's why it was published.
Very nice. Moving on to, I guess we've got a lot of. I was just collecting information on what the perspective is from the Daily Jolt on the Eagle, and people write some scathing things, and that is the nature of the Daily Jolt. But how do you respond to lots of criticisms about how you're running the Eagle? I mean, there are lots of typos, there are lots of mistakes. I mean, you said before that was human nature, but other newspapers seem to do it. Why can't? I mean, and even students have said that the Eagle has been better in the past. And how do you fix that?
I haven't heard anybody tell me the Eagle was better in the past. I've gotten nothing but compliments since we've had the redesign, and in terms of the editing, besides a couple of factual errors that we sometimes make and we correct on the corrections page, there are no typos in terms of very few typos in terms of editing. I think the editing quality has greatly increased since I first came to AU. I pride myself on being a good editor and on catching even the tiniest little details that I think don't seem right. So I would disagree and I would say that the quality of the Eagle has greatly increased in the last couple of years.
Well, obviously, from personal experience, I'd have to disagree, as I was quoted as David Cunningham and not Jason Cunningham in the Eagle. But I guess those are just one of the things that human error overlooks. But where's the line? Where do you consider the line to be between human error? Because we all do mistakes. I, just before we started recording, called it the Daily Jolt instead of the Eagle. That would be human error. But then, aren't there higher journalistic standards that, when running a newspaper, you're holding yourself to? And how do you separate the two? How do you say, oh, this is human error, that's okay, and that's just blatant, that violates journalistic standards?
I really don't think we violate journalistic standards. You have to take certain things with a grain of salt, and there's some things where you do have to evaluate how you're running something. I do hold the Eagle to higher standards. I expect my editors to feel the same way in terms of the writing we accept, the way we edit things. I don't just view it as a college paper. I view it as it's a publication. And that's how any editor should view it. It doesn't matter where the newspaper is originating, it's still being published, it's still public record. And I mean, when you misspell something or you say David Cunningham instead of Jason, those, while they're regrettable, it's not a violation of journalistic integrity. Whereas, right. When someone plagiarizes something and you miss it, then that's a lot more regrettable.
I'd like to read a quote from the Eagle. From the Daily Jolt. Personally, I think it is completely wrong. Lauren and her comrade Tony will not let any candidate write about an election, but it is okay for Travis to publicly criticize candidates who have no time to react. That's, of course, regarding to what we were talking before. Mm-hmm. But it is what I expect from the Eagle at this point, low-quality junk. Maybe they will start to cover campus. Maybe they'll actually produce a paper without mistakes. Sorry, I dream, is what the writer writes. That's really harsh criticism, but does he have a point? And how do you respond?
Well, in terms of the amount of time to respond to Travis's column, that was an issue, and that is something that I wish had been addressed differently. And I do realize that that was a really difficult decision to make, and sometimes I still wonder if for the timing aspect, not for what was in Travis's column, but for the timing aspect, I still question that decision. In terms of covering campus, I think we do a great job of covering campus. I think that poster was concentrating solely on the ed page, and the editorial page, we have liberal and conservative columnists. We have someone who just talks about social commentary. We have a variety of things that appear on the editorial page, and we editorialize on things that happen on campus and on things that happen in the nation that affect college students. We editorialize on what we think is the most pressing issue for that specific issue. And I mean, I don't read the Daily Jolt. There's no need for me to.
I mean, is it good that you don't read the Daily Jolt? Because a lot of people post on the Daily Jolt and express their opinions on the Daily Jolt, and a lot of news stories are broken first on the Daily Jolt.
That's the nature of the Daily Jolt because it's electronic and it's web. I mean,
right, but does that make it somehow have merit? Should it be considered in that sense? Because even the Eagle has a website, and the Internet's definitely the wave of the future, even though it's kind of already the wave of the now. Mm-hmm. Should that be something? I mean, it's a good way to monitor student reaction. And if you're getting violent student reaction against something you've done as the editor, should that be taken into account?
Oh, I welcome all criticism, and I'm not saying that I completely discount anything anyone has to say that is critical of the Eagle. I welcome criticism, and I want people to write letters to the editor and to write op-eds and tell me what they think. I also know the tone of the Daily Jolt, and it's very different from receiving a letter to the editor or an op-ed. I mean, people can say what they want, but I mean, if it's based on something, that's fine. If it's just criticism for the sake of criticism, got to take it with a grain of salt.
You've got a few open columnist spots at the Eagle. How's it going trying to fill those?
We've been trying, and we've gotten little response, but it's probably something that we can address better at the beginning of the semester when people aren't so wrapped up in finals and papers and all those things that happen in the mid to the end of the semester.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Tough questions, but well answered.
Thank you.
Will join us for the next segment after this commercial break.